Welcome to the Doctor's Corner with Dr. KLINE and JONELLE ELGAWAY. Okay, Call Nation, you've been waiting all week. Here they are, Dr. KLINE and JONELLE ELGAWAY.
Good evening. This is JONELLE ELGAWAY with Dr. KLINE. Dr. KLINE, are you there?
I'm here. All right. Good evening and welcome to the Doctor's Corner on KLINE Network for your daily dose of truth with co-hosts, as you just heard, Dr. KLINE, and I'm JONELLE ELGAWAY. There are two ways to listen into tonight's program: through our website, www.cawnatation.com, or YouTube channel, The Doctor's Corner, where you can live chat with the audience. Please make sure to click subscribe on all Call360 Network YouTube channels. If you'd like to become a part of the Call360 Network and volunteer or have future mailbag questions for Dr. KLINE, please email them to Jonelle, JONELLE, .ELGAWAY at call360.com. Tonight's topic is on patients taking pain medication and how their parents or family and friends treat them because they are taking pain medications. We are looking for call-ins, which is you. So if you'd like to share how you've been treated, please call into our studio line at 415-403-2715. If you could all call in and please stay on topic, Dr. KLINE and I would love to have as many people call in to share, so listeners know just how broad this is, and also to help end the stigma as to who takes pain medications and what they are really like. Before we get into tonight's show, welcome, Dr. KLINE. How are you tonight?
I'm just dandy.
Is there anything newsworthy that has occurred recently that you'd like to share with us?
We've had several things published, and we're going to have a little quiz at the end, and we're going to ask everybody why these won't work. Tennessee law proposes to put combination locks on pill bottles to fight the opioid crisis. A bill that restricts the use of fentanyl passes the Pennsylvania House unanimously. It would be fine to use it for palliative care. There goes our palliative care exemption, which is good. Surgical procedures in cancer patients. The legislators said that they would call for an annual report on the state number of fentanyl-related overdoses. So they're going to restrict the fentanyl to prevent overdoses. Here is an Health and Human Services opioid code-a-thon. Code-a-thon. Took place in Washington, D.C. There was a $10,000 prize, and the coders were asked, can you help federal, state, and local analyze and supply the movement of legal and opioid drugs to prevent addictions? And one more. Fewer opioids, more pay. Doctors in Michigan are prescribing fewer opioids and get 35% more on their surgical fees. So what's the matter with all those? It has to do with the ignorance of what they're trying to prevent. They are trying to prevent overdose deaths, which is not specified by the CDC, but 95% of them were overdose deaths in heroin addicts out in the streets. So how is any of this going to work? Reducing fentanyl, prescription fentanyl, is not going to affect the illegal fentanyl that's flowing into the streets. It will just cut down on the amount of fentanyl available to patients who have long-term painful disease. Another one wanted to require naloxone be given with every prescription in the United States. What's wrong with that? Actually, only 500 people a year die from overdose deaths receiving prescription drugs. The naloxone should be given to people who die in the streets, but they never get around to doing that. Also, the price of naloxone went from $150 to $300. So our understanding of type 2 addiction, which is heroin or opiate type addiction, is that it's genetically controlled by gene A118G, that's Apple 118 George, which you can Google, and it is controlled by a gene so that people, when they first have an opiate, if they have the genes, are going to feel energized. And they may feel so energized that they spend the rest of their lives intensely seeking substance without consequence. That's our definition of a type 2 opiate addict, different than the other ones. Addiction is rare. They're spending all this money, and there's only one person in 1,000 running around in the United States right now who can become addicted because they have the genes. Starts off with 4 people per 1,000, but 3 of those addict in high school with their first opiate exposure. So trying to cut down the amount of substance is not going to have any effect on opiate addiction. So that's the news from Lake Wobegon.
Alrighty. Well, we have 2 mailbag questions for this evening. The first one is, if someone is addicted to alcohol, does that automatically mean they will be addicted to other addictive substances? How does that work? I have a patient, this is an RN nurse. I have a patient who is an alcoholic and stopped drinking 3 decades ago. She is now on hospice and metastatic lung cancer and worried about becoming addicted to morphine. At this point in her life, I say, so what? But maybe that's not the best way to think. What would be Dr. Kline's best response to that in that setting, not just hospice, but end of life?
There's 2 kinds of alcoholic addiction, just like there's 2 types of opiate addiction. So type 1 is a, quote, alcoholic that's, spends a lot of time drinking, but is able to stop. 5% of alcoholics, not a lot, 5%, have a type 2 addiction that's related to brain receptors. Most of these folks don't go 30 years. Most of these folks are drinking continuously, which is the difference between 1 and 2. Type 2 addiction, you have to drink continuously, and they have DTs. So I would guess she's probably a type 1 alcohol user, and so she's probably safe to go ahead and use opiates. And most importantly, if she's ever had opiates and did not addict, that means intense seeking, then she will never addict. You have to have the gene A118G in order to addict. She'll be fine. And she should be given God's own medicine, as our internist, our first internist at Johns Hopkins called this wonderful, safe drug. So.
And the second one is, Dr. Kline, if someone dies from an overdose, can you tell if it's heroin or pain medication? When they do blood work, will they see the difference?
Good question. I'm currently researching the levels in the blood that determine whether or not somebody actually died. And it turns out that the blood levels are really not that good. Some people die from a heroin overdose, a pure heroin overdose, at a much different blood level than other people die. But the problem is most of the time there's other drugs involved. So it is difficult to tell. And that's kind of critical because, you see, the CDC data is not based on everyday folks taking prescription drugs. And that's the way they've scared the population. These are hardcore street addicts. And they die from, usually 90% of them die from multiple drug overdoses, and not just single drugs. Almost no one dies on the streets from prescription drugs. That's a myth. So the blood levels right now, I would have to say, are up in the air. I'm still studying them, and I am suspicious that they are not that good. But we'll await my going through my big pile of papers on the subject.
Okay. Well, again tonight, we're going to be talking about patients taking pain medication and how their family and friends treat them because they're taking pain medications. If you want to call in, We will walk you through with questions, so don't be afraid. The number is 415-403-2715. So, Dr. Klein, how do you want to start this off? And obviously, I'm a pain patient,
Why don't you tell us some of the impact, the knowledge that you take opiate pain medicine. In the old days, they used to call these opium eaters. And just the knowledge that you take opioids, opiate pain medicine, what impact does it have on people around you, your family, friends, doctors, whatever? What's been your experience?
Well, personally, and it's changed because I'm 26 years into being a palliative care patient now, and probably about 17 years that I've been on pain medication. But it basically, I haven't really let a lot of people know that I'm on anything. One, in fear that somebody could steal my medications, break in, and two, that they're going to look at me like a dope fiend, So, which is that's probably the biggest push for me for not to share. But when I do share it with them and they do know me, I get surprised. They can't believe it that I act normal, and they didn't ever think that. Or they'll what is it? It's that constant thought of what we think somebody is taking pain medication and stuff like that they're basically a dope fiend and stuff like that. They'll look at me like that and they'll think that, and they don't even mean it. They just do it,
It's always like you had horns.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been really difficult. I've gone where I've not told people, and then I've gone through periods where I do share it, and it's scary each time. And I know a lot of people are afraid to do this too, but because of this atmosphere, I feel like we're all finally coming out and standing up and saying something, because if we don't, this is going to get really bad. I mean, it is bad already, but we are not going to change it. We are getting some calls, though. Would you like me to start taking some calls?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Caller from area code 706. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your name?
Sherry Harris.
Hi, Sherry. How are you doing this evening?
Not too well, in a lot of pain.
So tell us, how has your family and friends treated you when they found out about pain medication, that you were taking it? Or are you a family or a friend?
My family and friends, they were very thankful that I found something to help me, because they watched me suffer and not be able to do nothing.
Right, so you didn't have
now,
you've had no negative reactions to your pain medicine?
No, sir.
Oh, that's good.
Whatsoever. And I was 12 years on Oxycontin and thrived. Well, since this new thing has happened, since they have a witch hunt against us, I was taking 230 milligrams a day, and then 410 Percocet for breakthroughs. Now I am on 4 milligram Dilaudid. I can barely do anything. And this is my insurance company doing this to me. What can I do?
Well, you can file a complaint with the state insurance commissioner. Usually there's an online site, and you tell them that your insurance company is purposely forcing you into under-treatment, which is a negligent act. Under-treatment is always a negligent act.
It's very negligent, because I'm just going to tell you, I've never thought about this so much in my life than I have in the past 6 months.
Well, and your doctor, your doctor is ultimately responsible, and so you can file a complaint about your doctor under-treating you as well, and see what happens. Under-treatment is kind of the key thing to approach complaints with, because I know in 45 years of practicing, I cannot think of a single incident where under-treatment is not negligent. And it's even worse because it's purposeful. Suppose you came to me and you had cancer, and I said, well, we're going to give you some chemotherapy, but, I'm just going to give you half a dose. We're just going to undertreat you because I think that's what you need to do, and see you later.
Yeah, it's hard.
That's an appropriate, parallel story. It is always negligent to purposely undertreat someone unless there is a real powerful reason. And I can't think of any. Maybe some doctors can, but they need to be asked, what is the reason you are purposely undertreating this person? It doesn't matter whether it's pain or a strep throat or pneumonia. We do not purposely undertreat people. So, but thanks for calling in, and I'm sorry you're having this problem, but we're pretty sure that there's 7 million other people like you, and everybody's got their head in the sand. But we know there's 10 million people who receive opiates daily, long term, and we know from 5 different surveys that 2/3 of those have been reduced or taken off. So our 7 million figure is pretty good until proven otherwise. So don't feel alone. And one of these days, this is going to change. They're already holding hearings in Congress with the new takeover by the other party, and they're starting to listen to these things. So contact your state legislator and your U.S. federal legislator, and what you want to do is be counted. They're not going to necessarily do anything, but they're going to count you. And that's what staffers do in these offices. They go to the representative or the senator and they say, well, what's the mail like this week? Oh, let's see, we got 2 mail questions about pain. Oh, okay. And we got 45 about hog farms. Oh, okay. So, if you just mail in little brief things, then they're going to report to the legislator, oh, there were 600 letters about pain being cut off. Then they're going to attach that to the federal stuff about rapid tapering. So don't hesitate to email because they will count them. You can call and leave a little brief message. If there's a bunch of you, like 4 or 5 people, go in and talk to the legislative aide. They're counting. And as soon as the numbers get high enough, they're going to go, whoa, this is a problem in our constituency and we need to look at it. So I encourage you to both your state and your federal legislator. You don't need to, go on and on and on. You can just say, I was treated successfully X number of years. Then my insurance company cut me off and my life now is terrible. And the reason it's terrible, and then you list some functional things. I used to walk my dog and I can't anymore. I can't go to the store. Always list the functional things because people do not understand that serious pain involves loss of function. That's what's horrible. Mothers, sitting around on their couch, couldn't get up and make their 10-year-old a sandwich. They couldn't get off the couch. They were in so much pain. And so she just directed her 10-year-old to make his own sandwiches. That's horrible.
Yes, that is.
So thanks for calling in.
We have a bunch of callers, by the way, so if you're online, just please hold and we'll get to you as soon as we can. All right, we're going to take a caller from area code 716. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your name? Hello, caller from area code 716.
Hello.
Hi, what's your name?
This is Jessica. Sorry, I got listening into the podcast in my ear and didn't hear the noise.
Oh, that's okay. Well, we're happy to have you, Jessica. So what, how have people treated you since they found out that you were on pain medication?
Well, my family and friends kind of knew right from the beginning that I was put on pain meds. When I was injured in 2003, I tried to work for a while, and my situation is a little different because I'm on workman's comp. And so that's who's really stopping my medication. My pain doctor is actually going to give me the meds at least better than what I'm getting now. But because workman's comp has their own guidelines, which are considered law, that's who's forcing me off of my meds. But the whole reason I ended up getting the last surgery I did, which was, I think, the worst thing I could have done for my situation at that time, was due in a large part to friends and family urging me to, get off of these pain meds. And I'd already been cut down, and there was really nothing, any other options that they could think of. I kept saying, well, I need my pain meds back and I can function again. And they just felt that they were playing a part, like the hyperalgesia that's going around. They say that, that causes pain. And I had that issue with my one of my old nurse adjusters saying stuff publicly on my page. And it's that whole stigma that goes along, and that mindset that goes along with it. And it's just constantly paraded out in media saying how bad these are for you. And I just felt kind of pressured into getting the surgery as to show, okay, and plus you always have that desperate hope that, well, maybe this time it'll work, And I thought, well, okay, I'll do this last surgery one more time. And if it works, awesome. That I have nothing to lose, right? But it didn't work. And, I just wish I hadn't done it. And I felt that I was being pressured because of so many people saying, well, pills aren't the answer. And, you should try this, and the whole, yoga, which I'm not against any of that. But when you've tried every single thing, and I've done almost every, like they call these alternative therapies, I've tried almost every single one of them. And the only way I was able to get to those therapies in the first place was because I was on pain meds that allowed me to function well enough to drive myself to these places and
to the PT. That's a good. What do you think that the people urging you off the pain medicines were actually worried about? What's in the back of their minds?
I think they're worried just because of what they hear. A lot of them don't live nearby me. They're out of state, and they see all these horrible stories. I think they equate it, because it happened almost simultaneously with my degraded lifestyle. I think that they're blaming the pain meds for part of my loss of function, when in reality it's due to the injuries and the pain from this.
Yeah, it's the other way around. Or do you think they're afraid that you're going to die of an overdose or become addicted, or it's just some vague, nebulous, like being possessed?
Right. I think they're afraid of addiction. But I think more that I think they just don't know what else to do, and that's all they hear is that this is going to help people. It's getting them off the pain meds. They're exposed as much as I'd like them to be to the other side of this, that all these people are being helped and getting functionality back. And getting that last surgery did help somewhat for them to realize that it's not, just me not trying hard enough or me not doing enough, But at this point, there's just there's no options left at this point.
That's what we're hearing a lot of. That and this is probably the worst thing that the CDC did, and the organization Prop Physicians for proper prescribing of opiates, or whatever they call themselves. They basically said that opiates don't work and they're dangerous. Therefore, why in God's name would you take these? I mean, if a drug doesn't work and it has bad side effects, it makes no sense whatsoever to take it. That's the message they broadcast. And you see what it's done to your life. In other words, you kind of nudged yourself into surgery that didn't work. And when in fact, simple, safe pain medicines really did the trick. So what we're trying to do with our educational stuff at thomasklinemd.com is to present medical facts. I'm not, a politician or ideologue. I'm just presenting facts. And my papers that I've written on that website are factual, and I think you can tell when you read them. But one fact we do know is that the number of addicts heroin addicts, opiate addicts in the United States today is about 0.5%, less than 1%, which is exactly the same as it was in 1920 and 1950. And even though we say this over and over again, the message isn't getting out to the general public. So you basically have to educate people and say, well,
be a broken record.
be a broken record, but
Yeah.
broken record is, I remember in Psychology 101, that was a way to get your message across. Just keep repeating it over and over again until people are sick of it. But you can say that, well, according to the research, this is opiate addiction is genetic. The other ones are not. Other addictions like to cocaine and methamphetamine and alcohol are not genetic. Only the opiate is, and it's very rare. And once you've been on the medicine for more than a month, and you're not addicted to it, you will never become addicted. You can take this stuff the rest of your life, and some people need to do it. Just like heroin addicts need to take their opiates the rest of their lives. You see, they're parallel diseases. They both need long-term opiates, and thank God this stuff is safe. If you had to take Tylenol the rest of your life, you wouldn't make it. So it's just a matter of saying to people, it's kind of like when I was a pediatrician, we had kids with cerebral palsy and stuff. How do you handle people looking at you like, you're from another place? And what you do is you just say, I have cerebral palsy and it's hard for me to move, but otherwise I'm fine.
Yeah, but what about the more rare diseases? Because, people know MS, cerebral palsy, but people really don't know CRPS or,
Well, then you do like the little kid with CP. People say, what's CP? Well, then the kids had a little one-liner, two-liner. They had explained to people, what it was. So everybody needs to kind of be ready and say, well, according to the research, if you've been on the medicine more than a month, and I'm just making that up, but that's what people need to hear. If you've been on the medicine more than a month, you will never, ever addict because it's a genetic problem.
Yeah.
And my problem is, and I share it with a couple hundred other thousand people. By the way, that's a good reason to look up your disease on the internet and find out how many other people have it. You can say my disease is, complex regional pain syndrome. And about 50,000 people have this in the United States. And it's you can't treat it. The only thing you can do is relieve the pain. So sometimes when you give people basic information, like the little kid with a CP, it settles them down because they don't know. See, they don't know what's going to happen to you. They're concerned about you and they love you, but they're concerned that this is bad for you. It's kind of like the guy that drinks 6 beers every night. They say, I think that's bad for you. So these are kinds of concerns, and you can set the concerns aside by just giving them a little bit of information. So,
something I've noticed too is family members or friends that have had health issues where they had to take pain medication for surgery or something like that. Suddenly they'll be like, oh my gosh, I know what you're going through now. But the funny thing with pain is when it stops, at least for me, I don't remember that pain. So I'll go back to how I was, and they do the same thing. They'll start treating me exactly how they used to, and I find that interesting. Another point I wanted to make is when I wasn't being treated correctly with the right amount of pain medications, like now, I actually, my intake for liquor and alcohol went up, and I was borderline probably of becoming drinking too much, but that was my only way I had to be able to take the pain away at the time.
There's an interesting biochemical crossover between opiates and alcohol. I asked a serious heroin addict once, I said, if you were on a desert island and you had no opiates, could you hold off your withdrawal with alcohol? And he said, yes, he could. Yeah. So there is this crossover, and alcohol can numb the pain, just not real efficient.
No.
But yeah, you're right. And you see, that's another interesting fallout from the CDC, cutting back on medicines. It's going to increase alcohol consumption
exactly in
people when they find out it does actually help relieve the pain. It relieves the pain more than marijuana, which is touted as a painkiller, and it's definitely not. But alcohol really does. It really does help a lot. Well, thank you, caller. It's really sad, that, basically you were kind of nudged a little bit into unnecessary surgery, which is a side effect of the horrors coming out of the CDC ideologues.
Yeah, I think that surgeries, you get shots, a lot of things we do just to please the doctors, so they'll go ahead and prescribe for us. But the other thing is because we're just trying anything, we're being guinea pigs. I mean, you do anything and everything because pain is, when living with it 24/7, high amounts, it's not easy. That's why we're having so many suicides. So, all right, well, we're going to take another caller. Caller from area code 423. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What is your name?
Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty well. Good evening to both of you.
Thank you.
I have a different experience, somewhat, and I'm going to try to stay on topic. My friends and family have just absolutely been tremendous. I couldn't ask for anything any better. They're very supportive of me, and also they have become overly protective of me.
That's nice.
And they are absolutely, it is, and I mean, they are absolutely appalled at what's going on out in the climate.
Well, that's good. Yeah, it's good to have some support.
I'm like Janelle. My sharing with people that I take it is very few and far between, because I, do have the concern that somebody might try to steal or whatever.
Sure.
But when I found out 7 years ago that I was going to have to be on pain medication, we bought a safe.
Okay,
and,
good. Yeah.
I keep my medicine there, and but it, unfortunately, I'm like some of the others. Everything has been great with me, and I'm real big on nutrition, folks, and I do believe that what you eat affects your body with pain.
Absolutely.
And I have several things wrong with me, but my biggest issue is RA and fibromyalgia. I fought taking my medication for a couple of years, and finally one day my rheumatologist sat and spoke with me and my husband, and he took my hands and he said, "Honey, the bottom line is you have 2 full-body chronic pain disorders, and there is no cure for it. You're worried about addiction. You are not an addictive personality. You'll never be addicted to it. You take your medication and you get out in front of that pain."
That's great.
Yeah, that's a rare circumstance. Let me ask you something. I wonder if we started changing the words a little bit. If somebody says to you take pain medicine or opiates or opioids, maybe we could say something like, I'm just thinking out loud, but something like, I have a pain regimen that I'm taking, or a pain plan. I hate the word pain management, but you can use that too. Say, I have a pain management plan. And it kind of sounds different than, I just take these heroin pills, as was said by the head of the CDC at the time they were publishing these regulations. Gee, I wonder if he was biased. Anyway,
I always say pain. I say I take a combination of pain medication, which is, if I don't have the pain medication, I can't do the rest. But the rest is diet, exercise, all that. So, and as in combination, it works. That's my best.
So how about pain control plan?
There you go.
So I have a pain control plan. And yes, it involves pain medicines, but also involves, and all these other things that everybody does. It also involves nutritional and anti-inflammatory agents, anti-inflammatory diets, and so you can rattle everything off together. And so maybe that's one good thing about the idiocy at the CDC is they want everybody on these alternate medicines instead of opiates. Avoid opiates at all costs. They'll kill you and they don't work. What a terrible, terrible thing that's happened in this country. So anyway, you can kind of confront that by saying, well, my pain plan, I do Tai Chi and I walk my dog and I take some pain medicines, and always just use the word pain medicine. Stay away from the word opioids.
Yeah.
It's a poisonous word, So I'm glad you're getting support, and but I also noticed that you're not telling everybody, out of concern, and I agree with you. I mean, first of all, your health is your own business. And a lot of people with mental illness face this all the time, and people with diabetes too. They don't want to tell people, oh, you have diabetes, no wonder you're so fat, or, oh, look at her eating all those donuts.
Right.
See, no wonder she's got diabetes. It's your private, you don't have to tell anybody. I have one patient who we started on pain medicine after many years of suffering, and all of a sudden, she didn't tell anybody, and all of a sudden her family and friends go, what's happened to you? Like, you're not grouchy anymore, and like a new person. And then when she told them, they went, wow, that's really cool. So, sometimes telling people later, especially if they notice that you're doing better, say, well, it's due to my pain control plan, So thanks, caller. Appreciate it.
Thank you, caller, for calling in. Well, we got another one. Caller from area code 606. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your name?
Megan.
Hi, Megan. How are you doing this evening?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. So how are people treating you? Are you the patient?
Yes.
Okay. And how has it been like? Mm-hmm. Go ahead. No. Go ahead. How have people treated you?
I'm sorry. I was just going to say I've been shunned by most people. A lot of my friends have turned away from me, and they have treated me as though I am, quote unquote, a junkie, just someone off the street and I'm not putting anyone down that does that. I'm saying that's how I've been treated. But
Right.
Even worse when it comes to professionals, when it comes to medical professionals, I've been treated even worse by them, because the second that they learn that I am treated with opiates, with pain medication, I am just, it's like day and night or black to white. It's such an obvious difference, and they roll their eyes, and because the medicine does help me, they're not seeing me limp around anymore. They're not seeing me in horrible shape anymore. And so then, of course, they think, well, she doesn't need them. Look how well she's getting around. She doesn't need the medicine she's on. But common sense would tell them that the medicine is what's helping me get around.
Right.
And
Well, and not only that,
Not
only that, do you have, is your rare disease, is it like you can't see it? So it's like on the inside? Because mine is, like, I look normal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I look totally normal. A lot of people have told me, you don't look sick at all. I don't know what your disease is, but at least you don't look like what you've gone through. And
Right.
it's an invisible disease, and it's actually more than one. And I know it's good to only concentrate on one disease, but when you have a combination of diseases, it's like a bomb. You have just this Maltese cocktail of diseases, and it's just all wrapped into one, and no one can see it but you when you're up in the middle of the night and you're crying because you have no idea where the end of the pain will be. And then when you finally are treated by a compassionate doctor that says, hey, wait a minute, you have this, and this, and you really need treatment, and they treat you, then when that's on your record, even if you have to stop taking medicine or you no longer need it, even if it's been in your record for 20 years, they look back and say, "Oh, yeah, doper. Yep, doper.
Yeah.
She's here for dope."
Yeah.
Even if you've been in a car accident and you go to the emergency room and, you've got a broken neck and a broken back or whatever, they still immediately look back on that and say, "Oh, you've taken narcotics before, or you're on narcotics now." And it's just, it seems, I know which is worse, and it's living without pain relief. That's definitely worse. But the stigma that is surrounded by people who want to feel better and actually have a quality of life, it's appalling. It's who wouldn't want to walk their dogs or go to family outings or be with their friends? Who wouldn't want to do those things? And when you have a medication that is God-given, that's put on this planet that helps people, it's the same to me as saying, I'm sorry about your diabetes, but that insulin, you're dependent on that, and I think you need to stop taking it. And so the person dies of what? The disease, not the medication.
Have you ever had professionals look at your chart and see all your medicine and be compassionate?
No, unfortunately. Actually, I've had one, and he is my physician. But the other people that I've seen, they have. Okay, let me take that back. There are two. One had done a complete hysterectomy on me, and he knows that even when I did that surgery, I didn't ask for pain medicine. He offered it to me, and I refused it. And so he knows that now that I am taking it, he knows I must need it. So he is fairly compassionate about it, but he's very scared. He says that in this state that they are, quote unquote, limited to a 3-day prescribing limit. But of course, the physician that prescribes is very compassionate about it. But anyone else that has seen it, including nurses, even when it comes to pharmacy techs, I've run into problems with this. It's almost as if we were back in the 40s and we're in segregation times again. Mm-hmm. And I hate to bring that up, but it truly feels like it.
Oh, it's a very apt parallel, because during the civil rights movement, anybody with dark skin was immediately labeled as the enemy. And so now anybody that has a necklace with A on it, not for adulteress, as in the famous story, but A for addiction. Addict, that you're addicted. It's interesting how many doctors have picked up on this. The CDC basically lit the torch under the deep-seated prejudice that we've had in our country for 100 years, that opiate medication is extremely dangerous and, more importantly, immoral. I read a DEA regulation the other day that used the word morals, that they were fighting morals, almost fell over. And there it was, MORALS, right in the DEA regulations.
Well, I don't know what morals they're following. I mean,
yeah,
they're killing
exactly.
people.
They're this is led by, if I hate to say this, but by males.
Okay.
And you see, this started out with males trying to protect Victorian women from becoming loose. And they were becoming loose because they were taking opiates. Well, that doesn't make you loose, but who cares? That's what they thought. They were becoming loose women. And of course, at the Victorian times, the males were all out protecting the virtues of the women, since they couldn't protect their own virtues, being helpless females. And that's how it got started. And, that's funny. It's in our fabric, too. But, we do see nurses and stuff. It's hard. Back to our little analogy with the kids with the cerebral palsy. Children are kind of cool. Once you give them an explanation, okay, I'm good with that. And so it's hard to say to a doctor, I'm really not a dope addict. I was thinking the other day we should get these buttons made out, the big round buttons, like I am not an addict.
Right.
And
Right.
stick them on when you go to the doctor's office, you know.
If you had that, though, that's a red flag. You know
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
true.
Everything's a
Yeah.
red flag.
No, it's really hard to explain, but something that the caller mentioned about hidden disease, I think you can come back and say, you ever had a bad headache? You ever had really bad stomach cramps?
Yeah.
Well, did it show? Imagine that you have a headache over your whole body. Imagine you have cramps in all your muscle groups. Would that show?
Nope.
So, I think a little bit of our parable about the kids with the cerebral palsy, is something to think about. In other words, what can you come back with in 1 or 2 sentences? Not some long, just in 1 or 2 sentences.
That. So each one of us writes about 1 or 2 sentences and then has that to go to when memorize. Anybody, asks us about it. And I also like, I have 10 different diseases and issues. It overwhelms people if I say all of that. I think I liked how you also have said in the past, share, the one that kind of affects you the most or that, is the biggest one. I think that's a good idea because, people are going to kind of mute you out if you keep telling
and kind of think of with chronic regional pain syndrome. Somebody, what's that? We say it's a rare, painful disease, and here's what happens. For no reason, my left arm will swell up and become so painful, I feel like a whole gaggle of bees has stung me.
Yeah.
You know what else I do too? One little example, or a person with spinal disease, with adhesive arachnoiditis or whatever. Yep. You can say, something, when I get in a car and go over a bump, I feel like I want to jump out of the car.
Yeah.
People can kind of understand. This is like the little kid explaining his cerebral palsy. People, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Not the thing is to not go on and on, is to memorize these little things. Oh, you don't look sick. Well, you ever had a headache or cramps? Use that analogy. Use the analogy of somebody with extreme rheumatoid arthritis. Use the example of I can't hold bar of soap when I take a shower.
You know what else I do? I keep a journal, but a picture journal. So days, because I have CRPS in my hands, days that my hands are very, very swollen. You could tell from the picture they're huge. And then I'll have regular pictures and I'll have them ready sometimes, if I get in a conversation with someone.
Brief explanations. Yeah. And be a little bit dramatic. My hand swells up like a sausage for no reason.
Yep.
And it has this terrible pain and redness. People can buy that, it's not like saying, I have pain all over, and even people with fibromyalgia, can say something like, when this strikes me, it feels like I've just run a marathon 6 times.
Mm-hmm. Or ran into a brick wall.
Just use these little brief examples. Yeah. It's harder with medical people. They are really into this.
Yeah.
And, I got to say, if you're a fighter and you're on Medicare, that means you have been established as a protected class, as a disabled person. You can file civil rights actions against people who have discriminated against you by claiming that you signed out AMA out of the emergency room when in fact it wasn't true. That's an actionable claim. And it doesn't hurt to call up the local civil rights office and say, look, I'm a disabled person and I believe I'm in this protected class. The reason being in a protected class is very important is the evidence changes. So if you're a woman and you say I'm being discriminated against, they say prove it, because women are not in a protected class. If you are a woman with disabilities or you're a woman who is African American and you can say, you know what, you discriminated against me, they have to prove they did not discriminate against you. You see, that's a huge advantage people have who are African American or disabled or both, have through the civil rights offices. And they're all different, but it doesn't hurt to ask them. And you know what? When they go after somebody, they go after them.
Yeah.
You know, these are federal prosecutors, and if they think they can cream some hospital emergency room or something with a civil rights action, they'll do it. So that's something to look into concerning doctors and nurses, because it's very hard to talk to them. They don't want to listen to explanations. They think if you're explaining it, it's worse.
Yeah, and they're really set in what they believe. I've noticed, like I had pancreatitis a few years ago, and I was in the hospital for 9 days, and that doctor thought I was an alcoholic. I could hear him. I was awake, but I was out of it, laying there. He would ask friends, family members that came to visit me if I'm an alcoholic, if I have a drug problem. I mean, it was ridiculous.
That's a violation of your civil rights.
Yeah.
You know, when a physician starts to interrogate family members and is looking for false information, that's called hate speech. You know, if you're African American and somebody uses the word N, that's hate speech. That's part of discrimination. So when hospitals and stuff accuse people of being drug seekers, that's hate speech. And I'd be very interested to hear back from people if they, were wanted to contact the civil rights office. It doesn't hurt to call them up, and say, hey, I'm a disabled person by Social Security, and I feel I'm being discriminated against and have my civil rights violated.
Yeah.
And that would be nice if we could pick up on some of those. But thanks, caller. Appreciate it. That's good information.
Okay. Next is caller from area code 828. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. How are you this evening? What's your name?
Hi, my name is Leslie.
Hi, Leslie. Are you a family member or are you a patient?
I'm a patient.
Okay.
And I, too, wanted to share a brief story of an example of how I've been a pain patient for 25 years and how abysmally I've been treated by the medical community. And that said, I was also a medical provider myself. I was a quality assurance nurse for some years, and did also find that if clinicians found out that I was a nurse, even an administrative nurse who had no access to medication, that the index of suspicion for my being an addict went up even more. So I had to stop, revealing that when I go into a clinical setting. But I've been so undertreated for pain that I have PTSD. But I wanted to share a brief experience that is just an example of the kind of things that happen to pain patients. And that is that I typically have to go to the ER on average once every year and a half for bowel obstructions or partial bowel obstructions due to adhesions from a perforated gut and multiple major abdominal surgeries. It's all very easy to document, and I'm on pain medications for a rare bone disease that was acquired from steroids that I was on. And I was in the ER with another patient, and because I'm a nurse, I was able to pretty easily glean that the other patient, who was a man, was there for the same reason. He was presenting with severe abdominal pain, and he'd had bowel surgery, and so they were, looking into whether he had an obstruction or not. And the way the two of us were treated was at polar opposites. It was a female doctor, and she was kind and upbeat with him and with me. As soon as they saw that I was on fentanyl patches, I was treated like a drug seeker, and I was ignored, and he was checked in on constantly, asked how he was doing. His medications were brought into him without his having to ask. And with me, I had to ask for everything. Everyone was borderline rude with me. And with my considerable patient and clinician experience, I'm very well acquainted with bedside manner. And the way I was treated was pretty inexcusable. And so it's just, we were there for the exact same thing. I would make the point also that women are treated worse than men, and that probably does factor into it. But I would imagine that the lion's share was the fact that I was on opioids and he wasn't.
What would you think about a medical alert bracelet?
Basically stating that you're on pain medication?
Yeah, or something. I'm trying to think. Certified pain patient.
Or like palliative care, I think we were talking about too.
Palliative care slash
Yeah.
pain. You know, we should think exact, but the strategy would be a medical alert bracelet, and then the tactics would be what we put on them, because those are respected in emergency rooms, wouldn't you say, having been in emergency rooms? You know,
Well,
and
yes, and yet the bias against opiates, and this is, while it's kind of reached a level of hysteria lately, you know, having been involved in this for 25 years, I can say that it's always existed. And I think that the ignorance among medical staff is considerable. And in my, I have a public health degree and did a study on the undertreatment of pain as a public health problem, and discovered, this was in the 90s, that there was only 4 hours of education on average devoted to the treatment of pain in medical school. So they are not educated any more than, you know, the general population is. And I think that is part of the problem.
Yeah, good point. Unfortunately, the CDC has taken over and put its tentacles into the medical schools and training programs, is now providing all the training, which is don't give opiates, they'll kill people. I just took a 10-hour course sponsored by the FDA called REMS, R-E-M-S. This is the FDA's attempt to educate doctors on various things. You know, and we kind of welcome it. You know, if you're given some funny drugs for, you know, hepatitis and the newer drugs, these are good to have. But it was 10 hours. There were 70 cases that I went through. And they were obviously written by opiophobic people. They were awful. You know, like the correct answer was, oh, start tapering the patient. And of course, I'm answering something else, you know, so I only got half of them right. You know, and but they did allow me to make comments, which I did. But here's an official, you know, medical school type training program that was absolutely awful. As a matter of fact, there were, let me just remember now, there were 55 cases. 2 of them involved chronic disease. All the rest involved sore knees and backs that were sore from jobs, because that's what doctors think pain medicine goes for. So we need to do some education with doctors and point out that the majority of people actually have painful diseases and start listing them, you know. You know, you have one, intermittent bowel obstruction. I don't know, maybe on the medical alert bracelet we could put certified pain patient. And I'll just spring this on you that I've been talking to my local pharmacist. We're kind of imagining a process called pain certification, where we get 2 doctors to certify somebody needs long-term pain medicine in high doses, and a pharmacist that will get in on it. So we got 3 professionals signing off, and then you get a little card, certified pain patient. And so we're kind of thinking along those lines. It's going to take a baseball bat to straighten out the doctors and nurses. Maybe a couple lawsuits, you know, maybe a couple civil rights actions, maybe some nice letters to the board of directors of the hospital. Those are powerful people. They don't want to hear any kind of rumblings from the community that there's problems, because they are responsible. Board members are kind of like parents. Anything goes wrong, they are responsible. We don't do that enough. Of course, when you go on the hospital website, you will not find the board of directors because they're all hidden. But these are people from the community. A lot of times they're physicians, a lot of times they're not. And they want to hear stories that affect the overall reputation of the hospital. So sometimes sending letters to these folks can make a big impact. We need to fight back, and you basically just have to ignore the ignoramuses. You know, during the civil rights movement, you know, kids, you know, wore their Sunday clothes to protest and were fire hosed. You know, so come on now, you know, let's, if we showed 1/10 of that courage, to fight back and be heard. And so one way we can be heard is to write letters to influential people like board members and like civil rights divisions and, start moving it. And the public health department in all states license hospitals and Medicare. If you're on Medicare, you file a complaint with Medicare and they will look into it. Medicare really is a very good system and they don't take a lot of guff because they control the purse strings. And people who control the purse strings, like board members and Medicare and licensing people who license the hospitals, are the most powerful people. Sending letters to doctors and the head of nursing and the administrator of the hospital, waste of time. You have to go to people that control the purse strings. So, we have another caller?
Yes, we do. And it's 9 o'clock. We have 2 callers left, so I want to get them in.
Okay.
Caller from area code 503. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your name?
Hi there. My name is Ernie.
Hi, Ernie. Are you a patient or are you a family or friend member?
I am actually the husband of my wife, who is a chronic pain patient, has been for 14 years.
Okay.
And I can hand the phone to her in just a second.
Okay. But we'd love to hear your point of view because we rarely get to hear that stuff. Oh, go ahead. What did you want to ask?
Well, in listening to the show so far, and I will be listening in the future, we just recently found out about the pain community, found out that people were protesting. We were thrown into this about 4 years ago when they all of a sudden reduced her opioids from 500 milligrams a day down to less than 100 within a 3-month period. Her surgeon had acted as her primary for 9 years, and then he got told he couldn't do it anymore. So my wife has, in the last 4 years, deteriorated from a beautiful, beautiful woman with beautiful teeth and meticulous, took a shower every day, and we were working on quality of life. And she has, in the last 4 years, lost her teeth and does not believe she's beautiful in any way, shape, or form before anymore. I believe she has aged 50 years.
Did you file a complaint against the doctor with the medical board in the state?
Well, here's the problem. In listening to all this, I hear suggestions, and a lot of this is my fault. I have been trying to keep the medicine flowing to her, but I am scared to death that if I talk to the doctors this way, if I say to the doctors, you better treat her better, you better do this or I'll sue, I'm going to complain, da-da-da-da-da, they will take her medicine away. Her last thing is keeping her from committing suicide.
Well, that's a common problem, and it was the same thing with the civil rights movement. If you spoke up, they just take you out in the woods and hang you. So what you have
Correct.
to do is try to get together with other people, and it takes courage. But generally, if you go public, it scares the doctors. And if you file a complaint with the medical board, and you can tell them ahead of time, you can say, I think this is negligent practice. You are undertreating my wife. Her life has gone down the toilet. And yet you haven't given me a reason other than the devil told you to do it. Are you
No, the reason is the CDC says that I have to, which I called them on.
That's not true. You need to go in.
Then they say it's the hospital that's forcing him to do it, and I say that's not true. I've called them on that, but like I said, I don't want my wife to be a casualty in the civil rights fight. I will be. I don't want her to be. So that's what scares me. And in all your suggestions, that's what I haven't heard. And what I was hoping to hear was, here's how to do it and get a response. And I'll let my wife speak for a few minutes.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
This is Sherry. I'm the patient. This started 14 years ago. I had colorectal cancer, stage 4. And it just got worse and worse. I almost lost my life there. And I never got well, but my surgeon was great. He took care of me, not only with medication, but he put me in the hospital on a regular basis to check everything, all the time to make sure it wasn't recurring and different things were happening to my body. And I functioned. I did well. I felt great. I raised 4 kids. I still have my grandson with me. Then 4 years ago, he was told one day every year he would leave and go and help somewhere like Japan when they had their nuclear thing. And he was worried about getting my prescriptions to me. And so he called the lead surgeon. And that surgeon had examined me 5 years ago and said, yeah, you will always have this pain and you will need this, I was on high doses. And when he became the lead surgeon, he just told him one day, you can't do this for her. So in one day, I was just told, after 9 years of feeling comfortable, probably projecting on him that he was my father, my husband, my everything,
The other thing the other thing you can do is that you can become a little bit more aggressive and say, we feel that this under treatment is not a good idea. Now, tell me again why you're doing this without our consent. Oh, the hospital told me. We want to go talk to the hospital. Who should we talk to there? And so you go.
I tried to get my husband to do it.
Yeah, it's a bad situation, but appreciate you calling, and it's just awful. And what's happening to you is happening to millions of other people, and getting together with other people helps too. It's very hard to fight these things individually, but you go into an administrator's office with 5 people. It's a lot different than going in there with just 2. So good luck to you, and it really is just immensely sad what is happening to people like you. And thanks for sharing with us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we have one more call. A caller from area code 914. Welcome to the Doctor's Corner. What's your name?
Hi, this is Heather.
Hi, Heather. What would you like to share with us this evening?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you so much for this wonderful program. I always try to tune in, and you're both wonderful. I wanted to give a little bit of love and light to everybody. I myself am a pain patient. I broke my neck in 2011, contracted CRPS, which became full body. I have type 2 CRPS. And I was told I was going to die from it because I was having multi-systems autonomic failure. At that time, I had gone to the hospital because my organs began to fail because the autonomic system wasn't functioning properly. And they treated me like a drug addict when my appendix was bursting. And so they put me in a dark room for 6 hours while my appendix burst. And I could hear the doctors talking about how they thought I was a drug addict because I was on 5 milligrams of oxycodone.
Oh my God, what a horrendous dose.
To manage my CRPS.
Good Lord.
And my pain management doctor called them in the middle of the night 5 times and threatened to sue to get me into a CAT scan because he was sure something was wrong with my appendix. And so they gave me to the CAT scan, and they gave me emergency surgery. And then they said, oh, shit, what's going to happen? This patient actually does have pain. She's not faking. And so at that point, what is it that we would do?
Sue them.
I created the Coalition for the Terminally Ill, Disabled, and Elderly.
I'm sorry, that is gross negligence. You should sue the hospital and the doctors involved. Yeah, you try to get a lawyer to help you. Good luck. But, that is a prima facie malpractice negligence case. Missing diagnoses is the number one reason doctors get sued.
Well, I ended up sitting in with the president of the hospital, and I met the board members.
Okay.
And I threatened to go public with everything.
Yeah.
And rather than suing, I sat with them and I created a PowerPoint presentation and I trained them, and they actually let me train them because they knew otherwise I was going to sue them and go to the newspaper.
Good for you.
And so it actually worked. They actually changed. They actually listened in my little hospital here, but I have to keep checking in with them. What are you doing to help pain patients? So here's
a thought, nursing homes, a lot of states appoint ombudsmen that are separate from the nursing home that you can complain to. And maybe we should make, if you can get as close as you did to the board, say, why don't we appoint a volunteer pain patient ombudsman? And an ombudsman is a middle person, who is a patient advocate, but is a hospital advocate, tries to balance things out. People can complain about, crummy Jell-O and stuff, but if you had a pain patient ombudsman, now most hospitals aren't going to want to do that, but as soon as you say you're going to do volunteers, then they have a little harder time saying, well, we don't have the money for that. That's a great idea. And, maybe you could share with Janelle your PowerPoint and we could use it. And, I can publish it on Medium and stuff, because that's the kind of practical sort of things that people can try to do. And you're right. Becoming a little bit aggressive, saying, hey, I got a lawyer down the hall. He's just salivating because this is an open and shut case. So let's do some mediation. So what you did was mediation. And boy, that's a fine art, let me tell you. Mediators are good people to get to know. I mean, they really know how to get things done by staying neutral. So congratulations. That's really good. And hopefully you can share this with us because, if it worked for you, no reason it not work for somebody else. And you see, it's the threat of the lawsuit. That's beautiful. That's perfect. That's perfect. So thanks for sharing that with us. And hopefully, Janelle, can gather up your information and share it with me if you wish to share it. And, we can put it on Twitter and Medium, and so other people can share it.
And our website. Yep.
And Janelle's website. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you.
Will do.
All right. Thank you so much for calling in. Have a good evening. Well, Dr. Kline, we're going to have to wrap up here. Is there anything you wanted to say before we got going here?
No, but I think we got some new ideas tonight. I love the last idea about, going to a lawyer and saying, look, can you help me out with this? We're going to try to mediate this. Lawyers are mediators, by the way. That's kind of one of their specialties. And we're going to see if we can change things at this hospital. We got doctors and nurses that are not going to change unless somebody hits them over the head with a baseball bat, or the board of directors sends out memos. Then they'll jump.
Yeah.
Because most of them are being paid by the hospital board of directors. And also to start thinking of little speeches that you can have ready, at least for your friends. Well, why doesn't this show up? And this is a pain control plan. And try to get away from using the word opioids. And just pick your best disease that you have. People don't understand 5 diseases, but they do understand 1 disease. And just stick to your 1 disease. And so people go, well, what's that? So be ready. Well, what's CRPS? What's adhesive arachnoiditis? And just have a little 3-line speech ready. Say, well, here's what happens to me. So we got a lot of good ideas from callers. This is obviously a very prevalent problem where people think you have a string around your neck with A on it. And prejudice is difficult to fight, but it can be. And, in 1964, they passed the Civil Rights Law when nobody ever believed there would be a law of any kind. So courage to those who speak up and are clever. So good night, Jonelle.
All right, that's right. Well, I'm going to give you a quick rundown for the rest of this week. Don't forget, tomorrow, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Keeping You in the Family with host Dr. Margaret Aranda. I don't know the topic yet. Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is DPP Rally Talk Show with Claudia Morandi. Guest Mac Haddo will be on. He's a major lobbyist for Kratom National. And a big thank you to our audience for taking some time out of your evening to join us here at the Doctor's Corner on Call 360 Network for your daily dose of truth. I'm Jonelle Elgaway with Dr. Klein, signing off till next Tuesday. Have a great evening, Call Nation.
Good night.
This has been The Doctor's Corner with Dr. KLINE and JONELLE ELGAWAY. Copyright 2018. All rights reserved.
We are sorry, but the show has ended. Goodbye.